Welcome to New England Lacrosse Journal's Chasing the Goal podcast, your destination for all things lacrosse. I'm your host, Kyle Devitte, and not alongside me, but still with me in spirit through the interwebs, Mr. Jack Piatelli.
How you doing? Good.
Hey, that's what we're waiting for.
Thank you, Kyle. I was disappointed to hear you were in Lake Placid and you didn't reach out to me.
Well, I was there for Scholastic, not for the adult. So that's, unfortunately, the wires got crossed. However, I got to tell you, did you stay in the same house again as you did last time in Saranac?
We didn't do the house this year. We did a hotel.
Okay, so I stayed in an Airbnb in Saranac behind, across the street from the high school and behind the police station. And it had video games in it and like full console, the kind you see in an arcade. It had the Ninja Turtles game. It had Mortal Kombat. It had all of the, it had a snack drawer that was just pay as you go. I was like, this is the greatest Airbnb I've ever stayed in my life. Of course, Danielle is like, what is this place you've rented for us, Kyle? And I was like, what? It's going to be great. We got video games. And she's like, okay.
Did Ollie make the trip?
He did. He was there. So he was
he must have loved that.
He did. That's why she was like, trying to get him off the screens, man. And I was like, yeah, sorry. These are the good screens, though. These are the ones that don't rot your brain. These are what teach you hand-eye coordination.
Yes.
So they're the machines that raised me. So if you like me, you're gonna make a little mini him. We should welcome our guest, the new head coach of St. Anselm College, Drew Bourdeau. Drew, what's up, man?
How we doing? Super excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you, Coach. It's got to be pretty special having played at St. A's a number of years ago and being chosen to take over the program. Obviously, the program has done some great things the last couple of years, but for you to have played there, now have the opportunity to be the head coach and run the show, congratulations.
Thank you very much. Yeah, the name of the podcast is Chasing the Goal, and I just keep telling everyone this has been my dream job since the first day I walked on campus. So I'm still pinching myself, feel like I'm in a dream, but it's an unbelievable opportunity. I'm really excited.
How did it come about? How did that happen? Because you were coaching Bedford last year, had led Bedford to one of their best seasons ever, a couple goals shy of the championship, took BG to OT, smashed a bunch of teams on the way. You really had everything rolling. How did the college opportunity happen?
Yeah, great question. So I was planning on being at Bedford for the next, 35 years. I was planning on retiring there as a teacher and coaching there. We had an unbelievable run. And the last day of school, I'm packing my room up and I get a call from Coach Shimana. And he was like, hey, I'm leaving. I'm going to Merrimack. What do you think about taking over? And I was like, kind of laughed at it. I was like, yeah, that would be awesome. But a lot of things would have to happen for that to happen. He was like, well, the first thing I need to know is, are you interested? And I was like, well, heck yeah, I'm interested. Are you kidding me? And then from there, it was just a matter of, jumping through all the hoops and applying and, just proving to the committee that I can coach at the college level is really the biggest thing. And here we are.
Now, I think it's interesting that it happened that way. And we were talking about before we started recording that I used to coach at St. A's. I'm familiar with St. A's. It's in New Hampshire. It's an older campus, but they've redone a ton of stuff like the field and kind of the backfields. And now it's they're putting more money into athletics, and it's grown to the point in Division II where they're basically in the semifinals almost every year. And that's a real testament to what Coach Shimana has built there and all the staff that he brought through there and all the players. I think there's probably I remember when someone told me that you took it, and I don't know you personally, but I know who you are, right? I know your assistant, Matty Howe, pretty well. And I was like, what the heck? How did that happen? Because I get texts that I do D2 and D3 rankings, and they're like, who is this? And I was like, well, I mean, he just led Bedford to one of their best seasons ever. The school's only been around for 15 years. They went to toe to toe with BG, and they're like, oh, really? I was like, yeah, did you watch that? It's on YouTube. Watch the game. And they're like, oh, I can see what he did, and these are coaches, right? Like college coaches. And I was like, they wouldn't have chosen him if he didn't like want it or know what he was doing. Like that's kind of the thing that I said. So I kind of defended you without knowing you.
Well, I appreciate that.
But I also knew you through like Tomahawks, and a couple of my kids have played Tomahawks under you, I think, from Hopkinton. So, yeah, I mean, it's always great when like a New Hampshire guy does a New Hampshire thing. Like we're happy. We love that, right? Like that's a great thing. But the context of St. A's is so elevated now, as opposed to like 15 years ago or 20 years ago or whatever. How do you kind of look at that as a former player? Like, how many things have changed, and the resources that you're being given to stay in that realm and keeping all these recruits that the previous regime brought in?
Yeah. So really the biggest thing was, why Coach Shimano reached out to me was the culture that he's built, and that as a player, I helped him build when I was here. I was able to play for him for 3 years. He came my sophomore year. And so the biggest thing was just he wanted to make sure that the culture remained the same, and that the guys that were going to stay were in that same culture, and no one really knew it better than me. But, where I can kind of see the pieces where they fell was my sophomore year. Darren Montgomery was hired. He's the current AD, and, he just is so intelligent in what he does. It's little things that he does, but like my freshman year when I was here, if you walked through the car center, like the walls were painted green and red, and you didn't see hawks anywhere, and he made it so that we just painted everything navy blue, and there's hawks everywhere. And if you're in the football wing, it says St. Anselm football, and it says Hawks lacrosse in my office. And the biggest thing he did was he made sure that every single team on campus has a full year, full-time locker room. And so I think the biggest thing is it was him. And, he's the one who gave me this opportunity, which is incredible. But he's just done a fantastic job putting athletics high on the pedestal here at St. A's, which wasn't always the case, as you can probably attest to that, Kyle.
Yep. Yeah, I think I remember just playing on the backfield before it was redone to have two different fields, and I'm like, this is our field. We like walked to it for the first home game, and as if you're playing on grass, and you're in New England, you're not playing until probably the end of March, right? Like maybe even April. I remember walking out there with the team, and there's like one bleacher. I'm like, what? Where are we going? I was like, wait, is this it? And then we roll up, and they're like, yeah, it's it, because it wasn't the field we practiced on. Because the field we practiced on was closer to the back trail, right?
Yeah.
Everything's different now, because I've been there recently when Shimano was there and talked to him about it and saw all the new things. But it's incredible to see like the transformation of that school from like a school that has lacrosse, a school that has football, a school that has these sports, to a school that actually embraces them. Because that's a real thing that happened. Probably you were at the beginning of how that really took off. Yeah. I was there kind of when it was like, why isn't this happening? Because the school has this pedigree. You compete in the NE10. And, it's funny, when I talk to people in lacrosse, I always tell them like the most competitive conference in the world is NE10. Mm-hmm. Because all these schools have the same amount of resources. They're in the same kind of like places, give or take, like geographically, like there are some differences, but you're attracting the same athletes to a lot of these places. I mean, your biggest rival is how far is SNU from you? At like 10 miles?
Yeah.
10 miles? I don't even think it's 10 miles.
Yeah, it's like 10 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah. So you have already built in stuff, like the potential there is now being realized and has been realized for lacrosse through the last like 5, 6, 7 years, especially with Shimano bringing guys in that, I've won. Like Ryan Slattery is like one of the best defensemen I've seen. I can't believe like a pro team didn't call him. You know what I mean? Like that's how good he was. But I think the other underappreciated thing is that in Division II, you have all these possibilities to go to the national tournament and then to win the national championship. But this year coming up, they've expanded the field. So it's not just north-south, you get picked by a bunch of people in a room. you can win. Like, winning the conference matters now. And I think that's a super exciting time for Division II, and particularly St. A's in the ND10.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's been crazy to see the transformation. And when I was a freshman at St. A's, we were 2-11. It was probably one of the worst teams in program history. And then by the time I was a senior under Shaman, under his 3 years, we were the best team in program history, made it to the conference championship for the first time in program history. And, since then it's felt like he's checked something off program history wise, whether it was getting a NCAA tournament berth. He won the ND10 regular season in 2021, made it, won that first NCAA tournament game this past year, going to the Final Four. And so for me, it's just making sure we continue on chasing that program history. And, the biggest goal there is win a national championship. And that's going to be no different with myself as the head coach and my new staff. And, we, like you said, we have all the resources to do it now. We have an incredible roster that I'm inheriting. And, I couldn't be more excited for the opportunity.
Testament to you, Drew, is, Merrimack leaves, the coach, number of players jump into the portal. We live by the portal today. It's a crazy time in lacrosse, and I think things will slow down once this whole COVID thing is over. But no one has left St. A's. I think that's a testament to you and what you said. Like, you were around, you understand what the whole culture is, and the players that are still there believe in you, not knowing you that well, but know you were part of that culture. Honor started, and now you're going to jump in, and something that you started with Shamana, you're going to be able to continue to build going forward.
Absolutely. That was my message to the guys. The first meeting that I had with them is, I'm a big fan of college football. I love watching on Saturdays and just in any sport, college basketball, college lacrosse. But you look at coaching changes, and the biggest thing that happens if it's a team that's dominant and then all of a sudden starts to not become a national powerhouse is a coach will come in and the culture was a certain way or the playbook was a certain way. And a new coach comes in and their staff and they, reinvent the wheel and try and do it their way. And for a number of years, you start to battle against the current guys that are there. And so my message to them was, if you looked at Bedford High School, if you looked at our program, it was a direct mirror to what you guys do here every day, how we stretch, how we practice, the offense that we run, the defense that we run, the way we clear the ball. And so for me, it was, I've been in this culture. I know exactly where you guys are. I've been through a coaching change myself. I know how scary that can be, but believe that this culture, the only things that we're going to change are to make it so that we win that Final Four game and win that national championship game. And, it's been awesome. I've been able to have conversations with guys throughout the whole summer. I've been able to check in with each of them. We have two great captains, Colin Mulvey and Colby Goodchild, who, are kind of the guys that are boots on ground talking to these guys and helping us relay this message. So it's a fantastic group that I'm excited to work with.
What about the freshmen coming in? I'm sure you've been in contact with them. How many freshmen are coming in, and what can you tell us about your freshman class?
Yeah, so it's a great group of defensemen, and that was, the biggest need. Obviously, losing Ryan Slattery, who is a generational defenseman, a guy who will definitely be in the Hall of Fame here, and then John Holland, who on any other year would probably be a program changing defenseman. He was an All-American himself, and so we have a lot of great defensemen coming in to make it that next generation of defensemen at St. Anselm College. And then a lot of great offensive players that we're really excited about that can learn under a lot of these senior leaders that we have on offense, like Colin Mulvey and Will Andrews and Joe Lombardi, that we're really excited for them to be able to develop. But they were the first guys I called, and I was just super honest with them. I said, listen, I'm not the guy who recruited you, but I've been in your exact shoes. After my freshman year, the guy who recruited me ended up leaving, and I was kind of like, what do I do here? I absolutely loved the school. I just didn't know what was going to happen. And I just said the same thing that I said to the entire team, which was the culture's not changing. The only thing that's changing is we're going to figure out ways to get those couple extra goals to beat Adelphi, get those couple extra goals to be able to win a national championship. And so it's been awesome that these guys are just as excited as me. I keep saying to all of them that I've had conversations with, I'm the freshmen come back on Thursday. I'm just super excited to get these guys on campus. I'm doing as much as I can in the office. I'm getting lonely here in the office. So to be able to interact with these guys every day, I'm just super excited for.
So tell us a little bit too about what takes place that first day. The freshmen come back for come on campus for an orientation. Are they back a week earlier before the veterans come back?
So they'll come Thursday. They have orientation stuff Thursday night, Friday, Saturday, and then the rest of campus comes back on Sunday. First classes are on Monday, and then we'll do a team meeting that week, and that next week is when we'll have that first fall practice.
So you'll meet with the whole freshman class at one point, talk to them about the expectations and so on and so forth, and where we start and where we go from here.
Absolutely, yeah. We'll be able to have an interaction with just those guys, and for me, the special thing about going here is I had the opportunity my freshman year. I was able to I played in 56 out of 56 games, and I started in 55 out of 56 of those games. And I was able to see some of my teammates who came from a high school and maybe had more accolades in high school. But the hardest part about college is separating the different hats you have to have about being a lacrosse player and being a student and, socially on the weekends and what that's like. And so that's really what the big message is going to be is you have to get your priorities straight if you want to have a great lacrosse experience and a great experience as a student athlete. So I'm really excited to talk to those guys about my experience at St. Anselm College and how they can give themselves that advantage going into the fall season, going into the spring season.
And it's not so much about talking about how you made your high school team better. It's about how you're going to start making St. Anselm's program better and
Exactly.
your teammates better. And because what you did in high school doesn't mean a thing today, boys. No looking back. You got to look forward.
Absolutely. It's not going to carry you through to your freshman year. It's a complete blank slate.
Absolutely.
I think one of the things too, if we're just looking at how the program is advanced, is how the recruiting process. Like, I remember when I was at St. A, certain coaches have different approaches, right, to where they want to get players from, and Shimano was really good at bringing in and establishing a real Massachusetts pipeline, and also a high level New Hampshire pipeline. Like, there are high level New Hampshire kids coming in already and kids that are already there. You got Rhode Island kids coming in. Like, you're a very New England, not centric, but you are getting a lot of good New England players. What do you think is the key to maintaining that?
So I work with the New Hampshire Tomahawks myself. And so I know Coach Shimano is working with the Twisters program out of Andover. And so for me, it's just being at all those tournaments that the New Hampshire Tomahawks are going to go to. And so I'm at Legacy in the summer, in the fall, we're in Taunton. So being able to see where a lot of those New England players are, I think, to be honest with you, the next step too is for us to tap into some of these hotbeds that we haven't necessarily tapped into, which is that New York hotbed and the Connecticut hotbed. And so while I continue to bring in a lot of guys from Massachusetts and New Hampshire and Rhode Island, I want to also be able to reach some of those kids in Connecticut and New York as well. And I go to a lot of different tournaments, coaching the purple team with the New Hampshire Tomahawks. And so I'm down in Maryland and I'm down in Delaware. So I get to see a wide variety of teams from across the country, especially down the East Coast. So that's, my next step here in these next few years is there's not a lot of guys on the roster from a Maryland or from a New York. And so to be able to see more of those guys, then more of those guys will start to come. It's just going to make us a better program.
Hi, I'm Rachel Hedden, head girls lacrosse coach at the Frederick Gunn School, an independent high school in Connecticut. We play in one of the most competitive prep school leagues and place athletes at top college programs. To learn more, visit gogun.org. That's GOGUNN.org.
Hey, it's Bobby Moran, Director of Athletics at Thayer Academy. You know what? Experience matters, and Thayer Academy's professional coaching staff understands how to work with each student athlete to help them succeed. Our coaches and faculty are committed to ensuring both 5th to 12th graders feel known, connected, and prepared. This is Thayer's secret sauce, nurturing each student to reach their full potential. Here, success is truly a team sport. Are you ready for your child to take the next step? See what Thayer has to offer at thayer.org. That's THAYER.org.
How do you, I don't want to say sell St. A's, but how do you get those players interested in the D2 program? Because the stigma with particularly Maryland people, I'm sorry, I have to dump on you, but I know it because I worked there. They are adamant that they're going to a high level D3 or D1, and like D2 is like, oh, Frostburg, you know, like it's a different kind of mentality there than it is here where, you know, again, we have the luxury up here of having one of the best D2 conferences alongside the SAC, which is the South Athletic Conference, which is like Limestone and Lenoir Rhine, all those great schools. So how do you get those players to kind of recognize the potential of the program that you have other than past success? Like, what is your selling point to a guy that's kind of like, you really want him, but like, we're not really sure how we're going to get him here?
Great question. So first of all, the foliage in New Hampshire is just unbeatable. So I'd start there, you know, showing pictures. You know, I don't think you get the same in Maryland, but no, in all seriousness, you had said it earlier, and I experienced it, just how competitive this conference is. You know, every single game is a battle, and it's not like a 1-year trend type of thing. It's how it's been. And really the biggest selling point is that if you look at the national champions the past 5, 10, 15 years, it's either like every year, every other year, it's the national champions coming out of the NE10. And so you're going to have the chance to compete for not just a conference title that is a pretty big conference, but to be able to compete for a national championship. It's not something that, you know, every Division III school can say. A lot of Division III schools get into the tournament, but to be able to this past year be a game away from the national championship, and while that's past history, but you know, every single year you're going to be able to have a chance to be 3 games away, 2 games away, a game away from winning the national championship, which is the ultimate goal of, you know, any college lacrosse player.
Yeah. And to be perfectly honest, the way the Northeast 10 has gone on, I mean, I remember, you know, 30 years ago, Bentley was nothing. You know, Jim Murphy's been there forever, and he's done a great job, but every team in the Northeast 10 has gotten so much better. And a nice selling point for you, and I think for a lot of the schools, is every game is exciting. Every game you can't take lightly. There are no layups. I mean, there are a number of schools you can go to today that where you got a couple of games on the schedule where, you know, that's a layup, that's a layup. Some of the players might be thinking that, knowing that, but you go to play in the Northeast 10 today. As an athlete, I want to go out and compete with the best every single day. You know, I don't want to layup because I don't want to give up any of my time as a starter or whatever. You know what I'm saying? It's like, you know, let's go out and play everybody who's really, really good. And that's our conference. And let's go out and beat everybody in our conference.
Absolutely.
Hilariously, Chris Cameron has just tried to call me while we're recording this podcast. So he's very happy you've mentioned Tomahawks a couple of times. One of the things about NE10 that's interesting is I think it's NE9 now.
NE8, actually.
Is it NE8? Who else left?
St. Rose.
Right. Well, St. Rose is dissolved, right?
He did, yeah.
So is there 8 now? That's wild.
Yeah.
I think that leaves room, right? Do you think there's going to be, conference shifting. I know like the NE10 just announced they're going to put everything on Flow Sports, which is kind of their deal they just made in the off season for all sports, right? That just happened 2 weeks ago.
Correct. Yep. Yeah. We're moving to Flow Sports.
Do you have any other information on that?
No, the only thing I know is that unfortunately now everything is behind a paywall, which, before you could go on NE10 now and watch the games for free. And now you unfortunately have to pay a fee to be able to watch the games, which is unfortunate.
It's okay. I will expense it and you can just text me and I will give you my code. How's that? Everybody.
Sounds great. Yeah.
Good. Yeah. We'll put that out nationally. Let's just do that. Lacrosse is, people see that as a bad thing, right? Like people are like, oh, I don't want to pay for the blah, blah, blah. Right. We get it. But the fact that it exists means that there's a market for it. And that is a sign of growth. And I know it's for every sport. It's not just lacrosse, but the fact that that's in lacrosse, it's already been there kind of trickling in from, I believe it's Big East does it. Or does their own paywall to compensate for not using Flow Sports. So the agreements between all these conferences are going to get more like this, where you're going to have to put in more effort to watch the teams that you care about. And, hopefully with that comes an uptick in broadcasting quality and, resolution quality, because I think that's really the other thing that people have problems with when they watch lacrosse streams. As someone that does rankings for D2 and D3, I'm always like, why is this stream? I can't see anyone's number. Like when you have something that you pay for, you'll be given that. That's something that has to come, right? So there's a good way to look at it. You know what I mean? Everyone's all very negative, and I kind of was too, saying that I'll give you my password. But like it's true. Not everything, you can look at it from a different lens and see that it's positive. One of the things I wanted to ask you about, I feel like we glossed over Bedford. You were at Bedford as a head coach for 1 year. And in that year, you accomplished so many things and played so many like epic games. And I know that because I'm coaching at the same time in a different division in New Hampshire, but I would look and just be like, dude, Bedford just got another W. Like they just took, like, I remember getting the Instagram story of like, we're going to overtime. And I was like, they're going to overtime with BG? I gotta lock in and try to watch this. I couldn't, but I heard the stories and I asked around, I called around. And they're like, yeah, it was close. It was, they deserved it. You know what I mean? Sometimes you play games, especially in high school, and it's like, oh yeah, it was like 2-goal game. They had a good run the first half, but then we came all the way back and they didn't score again, something like that. But if you're going back and forth, toe to toe with a school like that, like that's huge. That's like a big thing. And I know you had some really good 26s at your school at Bedford that are going to go early in this window. I want to talk about one of them that I'm sure you know who it is. He plays Tomahawks too. I think I don't know if you coach him in Tomahawks, but Bennett Matthews is sick. This kid is unreal. He was all over the field. I watched him play at Legacy. He's all over the field. I was talking to my friend Ty Zanders about him, and he's like, hey, do you know this kid? I was like, yeah, man, he plays for Bedford. Because like, not that Bedford's bad, but like everyone outside of New Hampshire, if I'm just pulling back the curtain here, if you don't play for BG or Derryfield and you play in New Hampshire, everyone's like, oh yeah, does he play for BG? And you say a public school, they're like, what? Like it's kind of one of those things. It's sorry to say it, but it is true. And he's just dynamic, man. Like I know people say like toss around like athletic or all that stuff. He runs and his body bends when he runs, and it's so crazy to watch his hands and how he puts his dodges together, how he gets to the middle so easily, just makes it look simple. That little hitch he does is incredible. Can you just tell me what it was like coaching him, and where you kind of see him maybe falling in this first wave maybe?
Yeah, absolutely. So Bennett is just generational talent. So to kind of go back, I started as an assistant at Bedford in 2022. 2023, I took over. And then obviously 2024, we had a great year. Bennett was just someone, right when you showed up to Bedford, you knew that Bennett was in the pipeline. And I remember the first time I saw him at Tomahawks tryouts when he was in 8th grade, I was like, who the heck is that kid? He had a Bedford helmet. I'm like, can we get a waiver to get that kid to play this year? His dad obviously is the football coach. And so, you really knew about him because of his dad and because he was always around the high school and around the weight room. But the thing about Bennett that I'll say, he didn't wake up and was just naturally gifted at lacrosse. That kid just works his tail off. And, getting to know the family really well, I was able to teach his sister, Olivia Matthews, and she should get a lot of credit for how great of an athlete and of a player he is, because there's an age gap there of 2 years. And so Bennett was always chasing Olivia around, and that made him more competitive and a better athlete. But, the thing about him that just stands out, that where I knew when I had met him and coached him the first time, is he just has no fear. He doesn't fear any moment. When he was a freshman, we were in a 1-goal game with Pinkerton. Like, he's coming up to me and like, coach, I want the ball, draw something up. Like, he just does not fear any moment that we're in. There was no game, that overtime game with BG. There was no point where I looked at him and I was like, oh, he's too tired, or, this moment's a little too big for him. He's just a sophomore. The state championship game was the same way. He's just a baller. And, I'm really excited for him this fall. He's really earned all the publicity he's getting and the great summer that he had. And so, I think he'll end up at a big ACC school. I think he's going to have a lot of really awesome decisions that he's going to be able to make. And it's just such an awesome, great thing for New Hampshire itself, to have a kid go to a public school like Bedford, work his tail off, and, end up at a big time school like an ACC school or a Big Ten school. It's awesome for the New Hampshire Tomahawks, but just for the state of New Hampshire lacrosse in general, it's really, really cool.
The last time that happened was Steve Boyle going to Hopkins, right?
Yep.
What is that, 20 years ago? Like,
Right.
I don't think I'm exaggerating. And tell me if I'm wrong, but I think that's the last time that happened.
Yeah. No, it would make sense. Yeah.
So when you say generational, I want people to understand you're not doing hyperbole. Like, he is that, like, honestly, he is that good. And, the podcast isn't about pumping up individual players, but I think, like, being New Hampshire guys, sorry, Jack, you're out of this one. It is important to highlight when players do well at the public school and come through the system, right? Because that's the thing. People don't realize this. The real thing that feeds the high schools and the prep schools eventually is the youth program, and how you're able to develop under coaches that actually care about you when you're in 4th grade or 3rd grade or 5th grade. Like, that's when you fall in love with it, right? Like, you get that itch to do better, and you just go, okay, I have a good coach. I have a good, this is my plan. I'm going to go and do as much as I can. And that's super important, because, like, when I was growing up, we didn't have that, right? I grew up in Henniker. We didn't have anything. We had nothing. We didn't even have a club team. Like, it was just, here you go play in high school. It's like, okay, are we good or bad? Like, no one knew, right? Like, we had no idea. Like, we would go into games and be like, what do we do? Oh yeah, we hit this guy. All right, we're gonna hit this guy. You pick up the ball. Okay. Like, now kids are so developed and ready, and it's getting on par. It's getting there. I'm not saying it's on par, but it's getting to the Massachusetts level, at the town level, where you're getting that instruction. And teams like Tomahawks and Four Leaf and even Hooligans to a certain extent in the west, eastern part of the state, like, they're getting more instruction earlier through the club as well as the town, which I think is the key to a player's development.
Yeah. The Bedford Youth Lacrosse program, when I had gotten hired to teach math at the high school and, wanted to hop on with Coach Johansmeyer at the high school, that was the first place I went to, because I knew that I had seen BG be this perennial, year after year winning a state championship. And I knew first place you got to go to if you want to start to change that is a youth program. And the Bedford Cannons organizations, what they call it, they just do a fantastic job. There's so many dads and moms who played at a high level that give back to the community. And we tried to do as much as we could at the high school to, do youth nights. And a lot of us, myself and a lot of the players, we would go volunteer at the youth clinics that they would do for the guys. And, Bennett's someone that played in the Cannons organization and has played with the Tomahawks. And so to see him just really buy into everything that the Cannons and the Tomahawks have done for him as far as developmental skill goes, and then for him to take it to the next level, it's been really cool to see.
Coach, last time you were in high school, probably, obviously the recruiting process has changed quite a bit, but when you were in high school, did you know you wanted to play college lacrosse? And the next question is, what drew you to St. A's, to attend St. A's? Because then the lacrosse program isn't what it is today.
Right. So when I was in the 7th grade, that's when I started to play for the Fighting Clams. My cousin played for the Fighting Clams. He ended up going on to play at Fairfield. He was my hero. And so I wanted to be just like him. And so in the 7th grade, really, actually kind of flashback, I had a great youth coach. I'm from Newburyport, Massachusetts, so I'm technically a Massachusetts guy, Kyle. But now I'm a New Hampshire guy. But
Live here now. We're claiming it.
that's right. I live here now. So one of my youth coaches, Bob Miller, he played at BC back when BC had a program, and Scott Miller was one of my really good friends. And so he'd coached me since the 1st grade. And in the 5th grade, he was like, "Hey, we should try out for Nestle," which was a huge spring club program back in the day. And I actually got cut.
To run that.
That's right. Yeah. And I actually got cut in the 5th grade from Nestle. I didn't make the team. And that's really where my love of lacrosse, came about, because it was kind of the first time in my life. I was always a guy that could run really fast and I was always really athletic, but it was the first time in my life where someone said, like, no, you're not good enough at a sport. And so from there, I just really wanted to get better. I didn't try out again until the 7th grade, and I'd made it. I'd made the Little Necks, which was a part of the Clams organization. And then, just in high school, I just became a lacrosse rat, is what I like to call it. I mean, everything, clothing, I had the Flow Society shorts, the Lax Addict t-shirt, I had it all.
You grew up in the worst era, my man. That was the worst.
Right. Yep.
Oh,
Everything was neon. I had the neon gloves, the headstrong shoelaces, everything. And so for me, I just really wanted to play at the highest level I could. And Newburyport High School, one of my favorite things about it was just how many traditions there were, and how it really felt like you were in a really special place. And so what really drew me to St. A's when it came down to it, because I was, looking at a bunch of different schools, was lacrosse aside, because they'd always been competitive, but they were towards the bottom of the conference. Really, St. A's, it was just the amount of traditions that you have here, and just how much you feel like you're at home when you're here. We were talking before we started recording, but the monks here have a huge part of it, and one of their core values is hospitality. They take a vow to live at St. A's their entire lives, and so they want to make sure that the students here feel like they're at home when they're here for their 4 years. And so for me, I wanted to play. The school was fantastic, but lacrosse wise, I felt like I could have stepped on and played right away. And I was fortunate enough to do that. And so for me, I had a couple lower end Division I schools that I could have gone to, a couple higher Division III schools I could have gone to, but education wise, St. A's was the perfect fit. But, I really felt like I could step on and play right away. And that's really what drew me to St. A's initially.
That's a great point to so many players out there, because you pick the school first versus the actual program. A lot of, maybe it's different, going to an ACC school, what have you. I don't know, but I think it's so important to understand where you're going, where your classes are, who your professors are academically, what majors are offered, right? That whole piece is so important, like you said. lacrosse is just an added value to it all. And you chose a school really that had lacrosse, knew you would give you an opportunity to play. I think more players, need to make that decision. Like, because if you hurt your leg or you're out for 2 or 3 years, you're going to end up at this school you may never want to be at. You came because you just came for lacrosse.
Yep. And I was the admissions ambassador here, so I did all the campus tours, and so that's kind of been the easiest transition since I've gotten here, was to be able to take kids out. And I had a recruit the other day that asked me, he's like, we're towards the end of the summer here. Are you starting to get sick of this, taking kids? I'm like, honestly, no, because I love this place so much that I love talking about it. But the biggest piece of advice I can give any kid in the recruiting process is just don't rush it. When you have the opportunity, and we used to say in admissions, which you can't really do the same thing in lacrosse just because of, how fast the timeline is. But if you can visit a school multiple times, and if you get an offer from a school and you can go back and visit that school now, knowing mentally that you have an offer and you can really see yourself at that school, I think is just a great way to really understand if that school is for you. We used to say, as admissions ambassador, to all the kids who would come on tours in the fall, like, please come back when you figure out if you got in or not. Like, if you go to a school on a campus tour knowing that this school has admitted you, you look at it in a completely different light. And so for kids who are in this lacrosse recruiting process, go visit a school again. If you get an offer from that school, you're going to look at it in a completely different light. And, it just really helps you see, like, wow, can I actually really see myself going here? And I see too many kids speed through this process to try and get an Instagram post of, that's going to get a lot of likes and a lot of comments. It doesn't matter when you're going to get 200 comments on your post, whether you post it in June or August. Take this slow and really take it all in to make sure you're going to the right place.
I couldn't agree more, Coach. 100%. And you know what? You see these kids repost because they decommit, because they didn't make the right decision. Now they're going to somewhere else and they're all confused because they don't know what they're doing. They're making so many decisions based on very little. And patience is a virtue. You've got to be patient through this process. You're going to end up at a good place if you study, control the controllables, and like you said, get on campus 1 or 2 times. But excellent message to our listeners.
Yeah, I mean, just to second that, we were talking about him before, and we talked about it in the last podcast. Like, I had a face-off kid who was getting, recruited, but like not by the schools he wanted. And then like he wanted to go to a school and the school said no. And he was like, wait, I don't understand why they would say no. I'm at a level where they should want me and all this stuff. And it's like, well, I had to explain to him, like, maybe they filled the face-off slot, man. Like, that's not how this works. It's not just like, it's not on demand, right? Like, nothing is on your schedule. It's on everything else. Like, you might be a perfect fit for a school because their last face-off guy decommitted. You might be the perfect fit for a school because they didn't get one in this class and their other guy just jumped in the portal. Like, there's so many things you don't know and you can't control. Like you were saying, Jack, you can't control everything. You can only control the amount of work and effort that you put into things and to do the right thing. That's what you can control. So if you can do that, the right thing will happen. And now, like, I've seen that play out with my own eyes over the last 4 years at Hopkinton multiple times. And kids are now where they belong. Like that, you just have to be patient. And, I made a bad decision in my college journey. I went to St. Mike's because I just wanted to go to a better school. I wanted to go to school. Honestly, this is the dumbest reason to go to a school. I'm going to tell you right now. I went to St. Mike's because this kid that I couldn't stand in my high school class didn't get in. And I was like, and he really wanted to go. And he was all about it. And he went to Quinnipiac. And I was like, see, sucker, I went to St. Mike's and you didn't. That's a lot of my early, I was a very vengeful child. I think like that's the worst way to make a decision.
That hasn't changed.
No, it has. I'm much nicer now. Trust me. I don't think, Drew, you haven't heard any bad stories about me yet.
Only when you write.
Definitely not.
Only when you write.
Only when I write. Yeah, well, I write plenty about everybody. Trust me. We're getting right into the most important. I guess important. I don't like. It's not
exciting. I wouldn't say it's important.
It's not the most important. It's not
exciting times. Exciting times.
Exciting. Exciting is the better word for sure. And September 1st is for if you're a kid listening or a parent listening who has a kid that might get calls. That's going in their junior year, they're going to get calls, they're going to get texts. The best advice I can give you is that that's not the most important thing. It's not. You can say that that's what it is, and you can act like, oh, this coach called me, hey, and be excited, and that's fine. But like, I can't believe kids make decisions this first week. To me, it's crazy. The first week of September, you should not make a decision until I wouldn't even make it until you can. And in coaches that give you a deadline or a timeline, like, do you really want to go to a place that does that to you? Is that something you want to do? Because that's not how that works. You're the first call. You're the first, whatever. Pick the right place. Like Jack said, go to the place, get a visit, see if it works for you. Because if it doesn't work for you on a level where you're comfortable in there and not just in the program and on the campus, it's not going to work. It's not. It's going to feel, and you go there anyway because you really want to play and you want to do this. You know what it's going to feel like in 2 years? It's going to feel like a job. It's going to feel like a job you don't want and you can't quit now, right? So make the right decision, take your time, and I think, Drew, that's great advice that you gave earlier too, is to go to the campuses multiple times. I don't think I've ever heard a coach say that, but it is really the best way to see if you fit in that environment, not just with the team.
Coach, last question for you. Fall ball. How long is your fall ball? How many dates are you allowed? And who do you have lined up to scrimmage this fall?
So we have 8 hours and 15 hours. So what we'll do is we'll start in the 8-hour period where we can't see the guys lacrosse wise for more than 4 hours. So that's like, 2-hour practices. Or if you wanted to split it up throughout the week, you could do that. And then they're allowed to have 4 hours of strength and conditioning. So we'll kind of give them that adjustment to adjust to classes and, sprinkle in a little lacrosse here and there. And then we'll go into a 45-day window, which is when we can see guys 15 hours a week. So that's when we can start to have kind of that more of a normal schedule. Our scrimmage that we have lined up, we're going to scrimmage Western New England. We're fortunate enough to have Jake Klopacki on the team, who is the son of Coach Klopacki, who's been a legend at Western New England. So that's a really cool family opportunity for the Klopacki family. And I know Coach is really excited about that. And then we're also going to host a play day with Endicott and Union, which I'm really excited for in early November. Two incredible programs. So we'll have an alumni game as well, but I'm like I was saying earlier, I'm starting to get lonely in this office, so I'm just really excited to get the guys back on campus and really start getting to know these guys every day and getting to compete with them in practice. And it's fall ball's really special because for me, as a high school teacher that coached lacrosse, I couldn't wait until mid-March, and now to be able to only have to wait a couple weeks and now get this whole fall season, I'm just couldn't be more excited for it.
Yeah, well, congratulations, Coach. Look forward to watching you take this program to the national championship and bring one home for all the New Hampshire fans out there, right, Kyle?
That's what we need. It's what I will. Hey, you live now. The school I think is only I live 8 miles away. So
all right.
Technically, I'm closer to Snoo, but I'll come see you guys first. How's that sound?
Awesome. Love it. Sounds good.
Thanks for joining us, and thanks again for listening to New England Lacrosse Journal's Chasing the Goal podcast. For Jack Piatelli, I'm Kyle Devitte. We'll see you next time.